This is Right on the Money with Tom Mosley, founder of Mosley Wealth Management.
Our mission at Mosley Wealth Management is to help people make sure they never run out of income the rest of their life and they pay as little as they're legally required to pay in taxes.
Since 1995, Tom Mosley and his team have been creating comprehensive, custom financial plans to help you preserve what you've earned and pursue what you've envisioned.
In retirement, a lot of people have built a great lump sum. We call that your lumberyard. But you need a blueprint to put that lumberyard into a plan that you can build a retirement house to live in.
What's on your mind this week, Southern California? The stock market, taxes, inflation, income, Social Security, how to ease into the life of your dreams? Let's discover conservative financial strategies starting right now. This is your Right on the Money Radio Hour with Tom Mosley.
And a very happy weekend to you. You are listening to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. He is the CEO and president of Mosley Wealth Management based right here in Southern California. And I'm your host, Kristin Oakley. We have a very important show for you this weekend talking about, are you able to retire? And specifically, some of you who are in your 50s, you might be wondering, can I go ahead and retire? So Tom, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you as always. How are you this week?
I am doing great.
Well, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. And I know that you and I have been talking outside of the airwaves here about just specifically Gen X. And I think that this is really fascinating because we've shared before that a lot of times the industry has focused really on the baby boomer generation when it comes to retiring. But you and I both know that Gen X is now entering the retirement red zone, if you will. And I know you're having a lot of conversations with folks wondering if they can just go ahead and retire. So talk about that.
Well, I have a lot of people come, and surprisingly, they're in their mid-50s. They may be 55, 57, 53. I had a 53-year-old lady yesterday in in Glendale. I have so many offices, I forget where they are.
Hard to keep them all straight, right?
But dealing with a really sweet lady from right there in Glendale. She's 53 years old, and she's looking at retiring. Mm-hmm. And the good news is, yeah, you can retire at any age you want. The problem is it's dependent on the lumberyard you had. Now, this lady had about $1.5 million. And we never give names. We always tell stories about real life situations on this program. That lady at 53 with $1.5 million and a very minimal need, you know, we went through things, but there's some great things about retiring at 55 with $1 million or $1.5 million or 800,000 even sometimes. And there's some drawbacks to it. And that's what we want to really delve into. You know, you talked about the Gen X generation, okay? Mm-hmm. And that Gen X generation has even been called in an article recently by Kiplinger, the forgotten generation, because there's so many baby boomers and so much marketing goes to baby boomers. I was at a Cane's restaurant yesterday, and I look around, and everybody working there looked like they were 18 to 25. They're all making $20 an hour now in Southern California, so they're all happy. And everybody in the room was like 20, maybe 30 at the most, 35. There was a young lady there with about a 2-year-old, and guess what kind of music they were playing? They were playing the oldies, the 60s, you know, and I could sing every word of every song they were playing, but I look around and that's the influence of the baby boomers. We were so big of a generation that the next generation that came along, you know, it's like Lou Gehrig played in all of those games in baseball, over 2,000 games in a row. Who replaced him? Nobody knows, you know? And then Cal Ripken came along and beat that record of consecutive games. Who replaced him? Nobody knows unless you're a Baltimore Oriole fan, and both of those people are not listening. So you know what I'm saying? That forgotten generation is the Gen X generation. And the Kiplinger article went on to say, Kristin, that the average Gen X person has about $40,000 is all they put away for retirement.
I know. When I read that, my heart stopped. But I mean, I know it to be true because I've seen it, but still, it just, when you see that on paper, it really strikes a chord.
Well, here's the other double whammy, because you're not out yet, but the second strike is the Gen X generation has far fewer pensions. There were more than twice as many people, according to the stats in the article, more than twice as many people who were baby boomers. And it wasn't huge there either. It was only like 35, 36%, but only 17% of the people who are Gen Xers have a pension. And that pension is that annuity that the company has set up for you and given to you. You know, some people say, I hate annuities. I love my pension. Well, that's like saying, I don't really like my wife, but I love the woman I'm married to, okay? Because it's the same thing.
Right.
And that those pensions are great. A little bit more than a third of the baby boomers have them, but less than half of that with the Gen Xers. So $40,000 average saved, only 1 out of 6 of those have a pension or a guaranteed income for life. So that's 2 strikes.
Yeah.
The third strike is up to you. You know, are you really making a plan? Those, unfortunately, are the averages and the rules. The question is, what are you doing about it to overcome both of those things in your own life? So when people come in, they say, can I retire at 55? You know, they come in for lots of reasons. They're just tired. I think the major reason that people want to retire when they're in their mid-50s that I've seen is, I've heard this so many times, Kristin, I got a new boss. My company just sold to another company that all they're interested in is money. And they're letting all of my friends go and all the people who know anything. And, you know, and that's happening a lot. I mean, I get the Wall Street Journal and read it pretty religiously every day. And mergers and acquisitions just means if your company has been merged or been acquired, you can pretty much bet that there's going to be a big layoff because there's a duplicate number of offices or positions in the 2 companies. And there's just a lot of things that are changing that way, particularly for the 50-year-olds.
Get your retirement right on the money with Tom Mosley. Call 888-930-5609 for your no-cost appointment. 888-930-5609.
Yes. And it makes sense when you've worked somewhere for a long period of time and that happens and the culture changes. I mean, a lot of people just want to throw up their hands and say, I don't need this in my life anymore, right? But then the question is, what do you do? Can you go ahead and retire? I think a lot of people would like to be in a position where they could say yes, but without having that solid plan, they have no clue where they stand.
That's exactly right. And another reason people want to retire is like a lot of people are married to somebody that's 5 to 7 or 10 years older than they are. My wife's 7 years younger than I am. And a lot of people are in that kind of situation. And when one spouse retires and they're going to work every day and they're seeing the spouse there watching the news or reading the
relaxing,
paper,
doing what they want to do.
Right. They want to get out of there. And then I guess the other reason that a lot of people, just so that I can make sure we do understand all of you who are listening, some of you are in your mid-50s and you're facing health issues. I mean, you're facing issues either yourself or maybe your spouse or the person you're going through retirement with, your partner. And you're saying, you know, I've just got to stay home. My dad had to do this. My dad was a pastor and he had to resign about 10 years earlier than he wanted to resign. And he had to go into retirement just because my mom had developed Alzheimer's and it was progressing so much. She needed constant care. And my dad was of that generation. He just could not allow anybody else to take care of mom. He wanted to take care of her himself. So that, and I guess one more.
Go for it.
The layoff, okay?
Yeah.
Because it seems like anymore when you turn 65, I've said before, they'll give you a pension, a party, and a gold watch in the previous generation. Now, when you turn 50, they give you an invisible T-shirt with a bullseye on the back. And every time they look to lay somebody off in these mergers, acquisitions, restructuring, downsizing, whatever you want to call them, when they start to lay people off, they always look for the people in their 50s, it seems, and the people who have more experience, but they've also, their benefits cost more.
Yes. Well, and it's interesting because this article also pointed out that after the pandemic, the group that was hit the hardest by layoffs is that group over age 45. And I saw that firsthand. I was in corporate, went through a merger acquisition before COVID hit. Once the pandemic started, all the mass layoffs started happening. And yeah, it was fascinating. To your point, those people in that age group certainly had a target on their backs.
Well, I'm not trying to just drive this thing into the ground, but the other issue with people in their 50s is this. a lot of people that are coming into our offices on a weekly basis. Every day we have somebody in our office in that age group, and they come in, and it's not unusual to see them, your children? Yeah, I've got a 10th grader and a 12th grader. So they're still looking at college. They're still looking at, and their 10th grader is still going to be a Major League Baseball player. You know how that is. So they're doing travel ball, or she's going to be a professional dancer and dance with the Rockettes or, whatever. And so they're paying for dance, and they're paying for all the expenses. And that 10th grader is going to need a car. The 12th grader already is on his second one because he wrecked the first one, if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. And that's just, I can hear the cash register going. And then on the other side, and you and I have before on this program and on our TV show, we've talked about the sandwich generation, because you're still having to take care of your 75, 80, 85-year-old parents. So, and that might have a dollar sign on it as well.
Yes.
So the issue is, can you retire at 55? And the question is, what kind of things are you facing? And this Kiplinger article on the Kiplinger report, it was just great to lay out what we want to do. Because in the rest of this program, what I want to do is go through 4 major things to consider that might impact whether you decide to retire when you're in your 50s. If you're sitting there thinking about it, say, yeah, I'd like to retire. I'd like to know what it looks like, because retirement, for anybody who's never done it, and most people only do it once, is a vast twilight zone. It's an unknown. Now, fortunately, I am now in my 29th year. June the 8th, I'll go into my 30th year of helping people make sure they don't run out of money in retirement, and they pay as little as they're legally required to pay in taxes. So I'm not retiring, and I don't think I'll ever will retire. But I have, quote, retired, if you understand the quotes there, with thousands of people through the 29 years.
Yeah.
And I know the pitfalls that are out there that you're going to be facing and the things to consider. So stick with us, stay with us on this show. We will tell you how you can we can put together for you a retirement blueprint that'll help you navigate those things by considering your situation. Kristin, tell them how to get that, but then we'll come back and we'll go through the major things to consider.
Absolutely. That number to call to get your very own personalized retirement blueprint from the team of ሞ슬리 Wealth Management is 888-930-5609. We have so much more to cover. Stay with us. We'll be back right after this.
Is having $1 million enough to retire? For years, many have considered this to be the goal amount to have for retirement savings, $1 million. But that's the $1 million question. Is that enough for today's modern retiree? Are you sure you've saved enough for a 25 or 30-year retirement? Are you concerned about covering large expenses, including taxes and long-term care? If so, you're not alone. But there is a solution. With a comprehensive financial plan, you can take control of your finances to help you achieve your long-term goals. At ሞ슬리 Wealth Management, let us help you work towards peace of mind by implementing a complete retirement strategy. Call Tom ሞ슬리 and the team of ሞ슬리 Wealth Management right away to receive your complimentary, comprehensive written financial plan. 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom ሞ슬리. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley. And Tom, today we are talking about this question that I know you are getting frequently in your offices when folks come in to meet with you to get their own customized retirement blueprint. A lot of people are coming in their 50s, and that's why we titled today's show, I'm 55 with $1 million. Can I retire? And before we go on, I know you're going to talk about 4 things that people need to consider when they're asking themselves this question. I think it's important to point out this $1 million number, because I think for a long time and for a lot of folks, the thought was, if I could just save $1 million, I'm going to be okay. Have you seen that to be true in your 29 years?
You know, I grew up in the 50s. They used to have a show, The Millionaire, and this guy would go around for a real rich guy, and he'd give away $1 million. And that's always been, are you a millionaire? Do you have $1 million? Because it goes to 7 figures, and it's a long time before it goes to 8 figures, you know?
Right.
And now people are actually coming back, and even people who are retiring in their 60s, depending on the budget they need and how much they need for income. Because income, Kristin, is your key target. If you're out there and you don't know how much you're spending, you think budget is a 4-letter word, and you don't know how much you're spending now, please don't retire, because you may be really totally ill-prepared for retirement if you don't know what you're spending now. And you say, well, I won't be spending X or Y or Z. Well, let's put it on paper. And that's what we do when we build a retirement blueprint. We put everything down on paper, and it all starts with, what do you need? And $1 million, Kristin, I recently had a client in my office that had $3.5 million. They became a client, but I'm not so certain. And I've cautioned them that we've got to be careful, because their spending needs and habits and what they're committed to spend is so high that $3.5 million might not make it.
Right.
So would $1 million do it? Maybe, maybe not. And that's where you've got to say, work from the known to the unknown. Figure out what you're spending in your budget before you retire. You say, why? I'm going to retire. Right. But you have to work from what you know now and then translate that over to a budget and say, okay, when I retire, I won't have this, but I will add this. Oh, I won't be traveling to El Segundo every day. Right. But you'll be traveling to Venice, Italy once a year or somewhere else on a vacation. So you've got to know what your monthly income needs are each month in retirement. And then we can begin to answer the question, will that mark of 1 million do it if you're 55? Oh, if you're 55, you put a lot more pressure. That's what we're going to talk about. But if you're 55, you've put a lot more pressure, because you've got 10 extra years than most people that you've got to live off of whatever you've accumulated.
Right. And so that brings us to the 4 things that people need to be considering when they're coming in and asking this question of, can I go ahead and retire? Which really translation is, can I retire and be okay?
Let me pour gas on the fire right off the bat. If you've got that little kindling fire and you're thinking about retiring in your mid-50s, you could retire when you're in your mid-50s. And the really good point is, and it's something I want to point out for sure, you're retiring in the go-go years, and you've got a longer period of go-go years. Now, here's what I mean by go-go years. I have for years, I'm sure I picked it up from somewhere, and I failed to give credit through the years because I've said it enough. It's just mine now. But when you first retire, you're in your go-go years. You have better health probably than you'll ever have again. You have more money than you'll ever have again. You've got a drive and a desire, and you want to go to Italy, and you want to. I listened to a podcast yesterday from a lady who's like in her 50s, and she wants to climb some of the highest mountains in the world. Well, go for it, lady. I want to sit there with a binoculars down in a camp somewhere and just look at you climb. Right. I'll cheer her on from a distance, but you've got a bucket list. And I call that period of time the go-go years. And if you retire at 65, and you're probably particularly if you have a partner or you're married or you're going through retirement with somebody, like so many people, it may be a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and you guys might just travel together and do things like that. But if you're going through with somebody and they're go-go years in because you go to the doctor and something's wrong, and all of a sudden you don't feel so healthy and wealthy and wise and all of these things, you're in the slow-go years, okay? And then if God gives you a long time on this earth, you slide into the no-go years where you just don't want to go anywhere.
Right.
I mean, I've told our advisors sometimes for annual reviews, when they're in their 50s and 60s and early 70s, and sometimes all the way through the 70s, they come in for their annual reviews. When they're 75 to 85, they're easier to find to come in for the annual reviews. But after 83, 84, 85, sometimes we have to go to their house for annual reviews because they're just in the no-go stage. So one great thing about retiring early is, you think about it, you're going to have far more time, and it's something that you could consider, and you really better do it with a plan to make sure you have enough money to fund it, okay? You need to fund your fun.
Yes.
But you're going to have a much longer go year period. And I want that to be something that's on the table because it's something that you need to consider, because every day that you don't have a plan, you hope you can retire, you're looking for a magic button of 1 million, and you're wondering if you could retire because you want to go and do all of those things. Every day you continue to work, if you could do that and you don't do that, you're cutting short those go years.
Yes.
Every day you're cutting short the ability to go enjoy what you've worked for all your life. So you need to develop a plan so that here's the problem. People don't do it, even if they've got enough money to do it, Kristin, because they don't have a plan that addresses guaranteed increasing income for the rest of their life.
Well, and they're scared to spend money, right? As a result.
They are scared because it is a total unknown, because they don't have a plan. See, they've got a broker that's always made them money and helped them grow and accumulate their money, but they haven't had a real retirement plan that's developed that retirement plan so they can be sure they can go buy groceries when they're 85 and also go for the go years when they're 55, 60, and 65. That's what a retirement blueprint that we develop for people will do. Nobody outside of the people who go themselves is more excited when people come in who are working with us for their annual reviews and they tell me, we've been to New Zealand, we've been to Australia, we've been to Europe, we've always wanted to go. Last week I had a couple in and they're 75 and 74 and they've waited and they've been with me for about 12, 13 years now. And they said, we're finally going on that safari you've been telling us we need to go ahead and go on, because now we know we're going to have, listen, this couple is going to have more money than they could ever spend. But I've been encouraging them, go during the go years.
Yeah, because you don't get that time back. And to your point, I think there's that tragedy of people have things that they want to do, but without that plan, not knowing if they can afford to spend the money on the things they want to do, that's what keeps and holds people back. And I think that speaks to when you were saying a lot of people say, well, I'm going to be spending less money in retirement. I find, and I know you had said this too, that most people are spending more money right when they first retire to be able to support these go years and the things that they want to do.
I had a guy tell me one time, Kristin, he said, and his wife was sitting there when he was telling me this, he said, we used to work Monday through Friday and we'd go to Home Depot and Michael's and the grocery store and Sam's and Costco on the weekend. And he said, now every day's a weekend day. And, and he said, we spend more money on hobbies and he called it garbage, but hobbies are not garbage. But you're right. You spend more money in retirement. You got to take care of the go years. And one of the things to do is have a plan so you might be able to retire when you're 55.
For sure. Well, moving on, that's the first thing to consider is the go years. Talk about the second thing that folks need to pay attention to. And I know that this is going to spill over probably into our next segment as well, because it's such a big topic.
Well, if you're 55, you got to consider something. Let's consider Social Security. All right. Social Security at 55, that's going to be a guaranteed flow of income for the rest of your life. If you don't have a pension, that's going to be the only annuity you have initially. You're going to have to wait till you're 62 to take your Social Security.
Right.
And that's even the low end of Social Security. It might be better for you, depending on your particular situation, to wait till you're 67 or wait till you're 70. So if you retire at 55 and you're counting on that Social Security income, you've got at least a 7-year wait and maybe a 15-year wait before that income flow comes in. So it's really important. I know last week, Candace had a question. Should we run by that really fast before we go to break?
Yes. So Candace in Orange said that her ex-husband passed away this year. They were married for 25 years. He was 68 and she is currently 67. She asked, will this impact my Social Security? Will I still be receiving half of his Social Security even though he's passed away?
Hey, that's a great question, Candace. And that's why we saved it from last week when we didn't get to it. Yes, you should be able to continue to collect the Social Security from your ex-husband. Okay. So now the good news is for you is that's going to continue. You're already taking it. Bad news is for the 55-year-olds that we're addressing who want to know if they can retire on this program. You're wanting to know whether you can retire with $1 million. Social Security, you're going to have to wait. There's going to be, and I call this second thing I want to talk about, there's several gaps. And we talked about the Social Security gap. When we come back after break, we're going to talk about some other gaps before you can get some very valuable things in retirement that might give you pause rather than jumping and retiring. We're going to talk about those when we come back. But the biggest thing that will help you go ahead and retire is if you have a real written retirement plan, then you're going to be able to make a better decision as to whether you retire at 55 or you wait.
And this plan that Tom is talking about, we offer completely complimentary to you, our radio listeners. All you need to do is call 888-930-5609. We are just getting started. Stay with us. More on Right on the Money with Tom Mosley right after this. How do you know if you're retirement ready? That's a question many people ask themselves as they approach their golden years. We believe the answer can be complex and depends on many factors, such as your savings, monthly expenses, and lifestyle goals. At Mosley Wealth Management, we can help you determine if you're retirement ready. We'll work with you to assess your financial situation, identify any potential income gaps, and develop a customized plan that aligns with your goals. Call us today to learn how we can help you work towards achieving financial security and peace of mind in retirement. Call Tom Mosley and the team at Mosley Wealth Management for your complimentary retirement blueprint. Call 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
Which will you spend more money on in retirement? Food or healthcare? Do you take your investments? How do you know if you've saved enough to stay retired? Will your Social Security check be reduced in the future? How do you produce income from your nest egg to fight costs like taxes and inflation? At Mosley Wealth Management, Tom Mosley and the team take the guessing out of retirement planning by devising a written plan that accounts for all of your concerns. The bigger question, are you going to be okay in retirement? Find out the answers to your retirement questions by calling Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management, 888-930-5609. Income, investments, Social Security, Medicare, longevity, health care. We cover these solutions and all of those other questions on your mind to answer, are you going to be okay in retirement? Call Tom Mosley and Mosley Wealth Management for your own complimentary retirement review, 888-930-5609.
Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. I am Kristin Oakley here with Tom talking about this question that Tom is getting a lot these days. People coming in their 50s and saying, hey, I'm 55. Can I go ahead and retire? And I know we're going through the 4 things folks need to consider when they're asking themselves that question. We're on the second point, which is you need to think about these gaps. And you already talked about the gap of time between when Social Security will kick in. What are some other gaps that folks need to be paying attention to?
Well, you have a gap as far as accessing your qualified retirement plans. Now, by qualified retirement plans, I mean your IRA, your 401ks, your 403bs, your 457. Some of those, not so much your 457 because that's deferred comp. And once you stop work, in most cases, not all, but in most cases, you can access that because you've deferred the comp while you've been working. But if you've got a 401k, let me give you a story of 2 people about 3 years ago who came into my office within 1 week of each other. They both were in their mid-50s. One was 55, the other one was 56. And both of them had already retired. Mm-hmm. One of them was working with a broker. The one that was working with a broker he went to his broker. He said, I'm retired. The broker wasn't a real retirement expert. And he said, well, okay, well, the first thing we need to do is take your 401k, which is totally legal, and roll it over into an IRA, which is what most people do and totally legal. Mm-hmm. But he was 55 years of age. The other one came in and said, I've got a 401k. I've just retired. I'm 56. I need a retirement plan. They came to us before they went to a broker. Mm-hmm. Well, here's the position that the 55-year-old was in. Now, both of them had over $1 million in their 401k. One had 1.2, the one with the broker. Mm-hmm. The guy that was working with me had 1.1. The broker had put that gentleman in a position where he could not access, you cannot access an individual retirement account before 59 and a half unless you pay a 10% penalty.
Right.
You can, where we put our guy, you can leave money in the 401k and access it before you're 59 and a half, once you reach the age of 55, without a penalty. We had a guy with $1.2 million that his broker had moved from the 401k that he had with his company that he retired from, had moved him into an IRA. Now, why'd the broker do it? The broker can't make any money if the guy leaves the money in the 401k.
Right.
But he moved it over to the IRA, and then he put this gentleman in a position, Kristin, where he could not access any money out of that IRA except for some health reasons and first home reasons and real weird exclusions. You can't access that money without a 10% penalty before 59 and a half.
Yep.
So he had actually locked that up and given the guy a penalty, and the guy needed money. The guy needed income.
Right.
By what we did with our guy who had only 1.1, we figured out what he was going to need for the next 3.5 years for income. It ended up being about $210,000 we left in the 401k. We then moved the other 800 and something thousand into an IRA so that we can begin to build a total plan for him. But then he started withdrawals from the 401k. Even at 55, he's able to legally do that without a penalty.
Wow.
So you've got to be careful if you retire at 55 and you start playing around with those 401ks and IRAs, or you take a broker who doesn't really understand those plans and they start playing around with IRAs and 401ks and they don't really know what they're doing. You could have an aha, oh no, I've got 10% more tax because my broker did it the wrong way.
Right.
So that's one of the gaps. You need to make sure it's overcomable, but you need to make sure that you have a plan.
Well, and I find a lot of people aren't even aware of that strategy that you just shared that you were able to enact for someone. There's probably people listening going, I have never heard of this before. I didn't even know that was a possibility. Do you find that that is just not common knowledge?
I had a guy in my office less than 2 months ago. His first name was Fred. He's in Orange County here. And he was waiting to retire. He was 57. He said, I would like to retire, but I know I can't access any of the money in my 401k. Guess what? Fred is turning in his resignation soon.
Wow.
Because he's going to go ahead and retire. There are ways to do things if you know the law. I have to give some kudos, okay? I have the opportunity. I'm a master elite advisor with 𝗏𝗏.
Yes.
You say, what does that mean? 𝗏𝗏 is known as the authority in America on IRAs and 401ks. You'll often see him quoted in the Wall Street Journal by the IRS themselves in some of their publications. 𝗏𝗏 is a genius at this. I train 4 days a year. He's a New York CPA tax law attorney. He's unbelievable in that he tells us how we can do things like this legally to make sure you can access the money that's yours even before you think you can sometimes.
And I love that that brings so much relief, I'm sure, to people who are done with the grind, who are ready to retire, and to know that there's a possibility to do that. That's really, really empowering.
It is. You know, Kristin, there's some more gaps, though. We're just in the second deal. First one, you got the go-go years. That's a good reason to retire early. The second one is watch your gaps. There's a gap between Medicare. How are you going to take care for 10 years of your health insurance? And if you're married and your spouse is younger than you are, it may be 12, 13, 14 years, you're going to have to build into your budget covering medical expense. That's a very expensive proposition when you're 55 to 60, and then it goes even higher from 60 to 65. Now, it's not a showstopper, but it is definitely something. I've had people, all these people were 63 that I'm thinking about. They were all right and ready to go retire at 63. And we came in and we started looking at their budget that we've already talked about. And then I asked them, how are you going to take care of medical expenses? And fortunately, they were able to keep the policy they had, but they had to COBRA it, which was a very expensive proposition. And so it's something you need to prepare for. It's a gap. You've got to cover your Medicare. And so there's so many things there. And here's another thing. And it's sort of an inverted time. Usually between 55 and 65 is when people are really what I call topping off their 401k. Maybe the college is done. Maybe all of those expenses are behind them.
You're eligible for those catch-up contributions, so you can put even more away, right?
Oh, they are so ready to really bang away big bucks for retirement, okay? And if you retire at 55, you're usually at your very high earning years. So there may be a gap in what you have in your 401k and what you eventually could build it to. So you've got to consider all those things. The key is you are self-funded whenever you do retire. You say, what do you mean? Whatever you have, you've got to live off of. Is there a Social Security? How are we? Oops, we got to wait for Social Security. Is there a pension? How are we going to turn that pension on? When you turn it on earlier, it usually is at a lesser amount. How are we going to make that gap? It's got to last longer. Okay. It's got to last you not from 65 till the end. It's got to last you from 55 till the end. So do you have rentals? Do you have an income flow? How are you going to build that solid stream of income that's going to take into account, I might not be able to tap my retirement for 4.5 years till I'm 59 and a half. I won't have health services through Medicare until I'm 65. My full retirement age on Social Security won't be here until I'm 66 to 67. You see, you've got to consider all of those things. And if you're going to retire early, that's great, but you've got to address these issues in a plan. You know, we always are running into what we call DIYers. And that's not like a disease or anything, okay? But a DIYer is a person who wants to do it yourself. And I've told the story before on my shows. I can plaster a wall that's been damaged on the sheetrock in my house. And as a memorial to that damage, you can see it every time you walk in the room because I just ain't that good at doing it, if you understand what I'm saying.
Right.
Sorry for all the English teachers. But I've got a guy, you know how that saying is, okay?
Right.
I've got a guy that I call and he comes in and it's amazing. He can spend half a day at my house and he can plaster that wall, repaint it, do everything. And I walk in there and I said, where was that hole again? It's gone. Why? Because he is a professional.
He's an expert in it.
He's an expert in it. When you're a do-it-yourself person, when it comes to retirement and you move it all out into an IRA so you can really manage it and you're 55 years of age, you might have cost yourself 10% of everything you withdraw. When you retire at 55 and you don't make preparation for the budget to include your health insurance, you might really put yourself in a bind. It could be $2,000 a month if you're married. It could be $1,000 a month if you're single to cover that. And you're planning on that Social Security. Also, all of those numbers in Social Security are built on you working up to that age. If you stop at 55, those numbers are going to decrease and they're not going to be as big when you get there. That's why you need a professional to help. What we do is we build for you a retirement blueprint that considers these and many other things so that when we look across the table at somebody and say, you're 55, you've got 1 million, 1.2, 1.1, you can retire, and here's how you do it in writing. That's what we give people for free, Kristin.
And nothing beats being able to see that in writing and be able to have the confidence that, yes, you are making a decision and it will be able to happen the way that it needs to for you in your life. And so we encourage you, if you want the peace of mind that can come with having that solid written financial plan, all you need to do is call 888-930-5609. More with Tom and Right on the Money right after this.
Today, we believe retirement looks a lot different than it did for our parents and grandparents. With longer life expectancies, rising healthcare costs, and potential changing tax brackets, we think it's important to have a retirement plan that is tailored to your unique needs and goals. At Mosley Wealth Management, we understand the challenges that today's modern retirees face. That's why our experienced advisors work with you to develop a comprehensive retirement plan that takes into account all of the factors that can potentially impact your financial security in retirement. We'll work with you to identify potential areas for improvement and create a plan that is designed to help you work towards achieving your retirement goals. Call 888-930-5609 for your complimentary and comprehensive retirement blueprint. That's 888-930-5609.
Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley. Well, Tom, I know that we are talking right now about the different gaps that people need to consider when they're asking themselves, can I go ahead and afford to retire? We're on to number 3, which is
debt. Okay. 4 things to consider. Go-go years tells you to go ahead and retire at 55. The gaps that you might have in some of your financial issues and health issues, you better be careful and make sure you're covering those. The third thing I would caution you is if you're trying to retire at 55, I just recently had a gentleman out on our Ontario office, and he wanted to retire in 2 years. He has about $500,000, and he doesn't need all that much, but within the next 2 years, he also wants to pay off about $600,000 worth of debt.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to sit down with him and say, that's really not going to happen because it's going to take all of the money you've got right now to pay off all of the things that are debt. And then you're going to have no money for income. Maybe you need to work a little while longer. You need to consider, how long is my mortgage? A lot of people, unfortunately, have had to refinance their mortgage, and they took a 30-year note, and they were 62 years of age when they got a 30-year note.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have a mortgage. You're going to have, maybe you're still paying off student loan debt, that Parent Plus debt. Maybe because of the 17% rise in inflation that we've had in the past 3 years, you've run up a credit card debt. And maybe you're still taking care of your parents. All of these are dollar signs. Maybe you were planning on retiring in a couple of years, and you went ahead and found that great deal on the motor home, okay? Mm-hmm. Or you went up into the mountains and at Lake Arrowhead or Big Bear, you bought a house, or maybe you like the river and you went out to Havasu or Parker and you bought the house. Well, when you go into retirement, if you go in too early, you're carrying a lot of debt. That's going to be just an added burden that you're going to be carrying. So when you're 55, you want to retire, go do it for the go-go years. Be careful for the gaps, but be really careful, number 3, for the debt that you might be carrying.
Get your own no-cost retirement plan review at 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
And then, of course, that brings us to what the other issue is. You mentioned this earlier. If someone goes ahead and retires at age 55, they could easily live another 30, 35, 40 years. Talk about the longevity issue that folks need to consider as well.
Well, I really want to address on this one, Kristin, the people who still have their money in the market and they haven't really diversified into a true retirement plan that addresses, where's my income coming from? That needs to be in a different bucket. It doesn't need to ride the roller coaster of the market. It needs to be something that's guaranteed, that's increasing for inflation. That's going to, when inflation goes up, it's going to go up as well. I mean, you need that into a plan. A 401k doesn't offer that. A 401k does offer investments, but they're usually highly volatile investments that are up and down in the market. And taxes, if all your money is in a 401k and you start taking it out and you're going to take it out over 40 years, you're going to pay a lot of taxes. And then healthcare, how we talked about that in one of the previous segments. How are you going to deal with your healthcare costs, which are going to be increased because you're having to pay a higher premium for 10 years if you retire in your mid-50s? And then legacy, how are you going to leave it? So 40 years, normally, Kristin, and there's nothing normal, but the market cycles about every 5 years to where we have a recession or a downturn.
Mm-hmm.
So if I retire at 65 and I live to 85 or 90, I can probably count on having 4 or 5 or 6 recessions and downturns if my money's just still left in the market the way it was for 40 years when I was growing it and when I was accumulating it.
Well, and it's interesting because I think people don't realize that and don't pay attention to that when they're younger because time is on their side. But to your point, this is why this is important to know when you're in your later years.
You know what? Time is on your side when you're earlier and the market leans your way. Here's what I mean. When the market's down 50% and I'm 30 years old, I better put as much money as I can in it.
Right. You get to buy low that way. It's on sale.
I get to buy low.
Yeah.
But when the market's down and I'm 70 years old, 5 years into retirement, and I'm just taking money out of my IRA and I don't really have a retirement plan, then I'm taking twice as much out when it's down 50%.
Right.
So the ups and downs of the market, if I retire at 65, it might be 4, 5, or 6 recessions and downturns. If I retire at 55, it might be 7, 8, or 9 downturns that my portfolio has got to suffer through. So let me go over them again. If you want to retire at 55, the whole theme of our show overall today is if you want to retire at 55, if you've got $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million, the things you need to consider is good thing, it's your go-go years, go enjoy it. Bad thing, you've got some gaps financially to cover. Bad thing, maybe you may have debt that needs to get paid off so you can really run and really go in retirement. And bad thing number 4, you may go through a lot of ups and downs in 40 years. Longevity, living a long time really becomes a risk. Now, how do we address this? We talk a lot on our show about our retirement blueprint. Here's the way it works. If you're interested or you say, I've got some concerns from some of the things I've heard on this show today, here's what you need to do. You need to realize that we offer you a free complimentary retirement blueprint. And you can claim yours by just simply calling in to the number that Kristin has given you. She'll give you again when I explain what we do here in just a minute. Call in and get on our calendars. I'll tell you what, my calendar is slammed right now. I've got 5 other advisors. Our calendars are full right now. We'll work you in. There may be a slot in the next couple of weeks, but you might have to wait a little while, but that's good. Here's why. That gives you a time to collect all of your documents and bring those documents in because we have to know what kind of lumberyard you have if we can show you what kind of blueprint we can build a house for you to live in retirement. So you come in to one of our offices and you meet with one of our 6 advisors. Now we've got an office in Glendale, right off the 134 freeway. We've got an office in Arcadia, right off the 210 freeway. We've got an office in Ontario, and it's right off the 10 freeway. We've got an office that's down in San Diego at the Scripps Ranch, at the Carroll Canyon exit of Scripps Ranch, right off the 15 freeway. We've got an office. Our main office is here in Anaheim, right off the 57 freeway, right across the street from Anaheim Stadium. So you set up an appointment, you come in and meet with us. And we don't have whips. We don't tie you down. We don't put you in handcuffs. We don't do anything mean to you. We just look and see where you are because everything starts with where you are. And from where you are, we then take your documents, we do some research, and we run all kind of reports. We run a report on your risk. We run a report on the risk that your portfolios is taking because a lot of times they don't match up. We run a report on how much tax you're going to pay. We run a report on the optimal time for you to turn on your Social Security, not maximize, but optimize, okay? Because maximize just says, if I wait till I'm 70 and I live till I'm 80, I'll make more money. Those are just some of the reports that we put into what we call a retirement blueprint. And we will give that to you for free. In that retirement blueprint, we will show you what we would do if you decide to work with us. We will tell you at that second meeting exactly what your fees would be if you decide to work with us, and then you make a decision and we proceed from there. But to get this started, you can stay in the desert and you can stay out there not knowing, or you can call in to get your free retirement blueprint
but now it's up to you to take the next step.
And there's never been a better time to be able to get the confidence and the peace of mind that can come with having that solid written plan in place. If you've been listening today and you've been asking yourself that same question, can I go ahead and afford to retire? Tom and the team of Mosley Wealth Management would love to sit down with you and walk you through this retirement blueprint process. Again, it's for no cost, no charge, no obligation, simply an invitation to have a conversation to see how they can help and serve you. That number to call is 888-930-5609. Hey, thanks so much for joining us this weekend. Be safe, be happy, be blessed, and we look forward to being back with you next week.
For your own no-cost retirement blueprint, call Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management, 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609. Investment advisory services offered by duly registered individuals through Mosley Wealth Management Incorporated. Mosley Wealth Management and Mosley Insurance and Financial Services are affiliated companies by common ownership license number OB61811. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refers to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength, claims paying ability of the issuing carrier. This content is intended for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the needs of an individual situation. All hypothetical examples are provided for illustrative purposes only. They do not represent real-life scenarios. Mosley Insurance and Financial Services, nor its agents or representatives, may give tax or legal advice. Individuals should consult with a qualified professional for guidance before making any investment decisions. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Some of the information provided may be from one or more third parties, which we believe to be reliable sources, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Mosley Insurance and Financial Services.